Welcome to Construction Tutor. If you've ever felt like the final 5% of a construction project is, 95% of the paperwork, the legal handshakes, and just the logistical nightmares,
Yeah.
well, you're not wrong.
I don't.
Today, we're cutting through all that complexity. This is the deep dive, and we are taking a very precise, very critical cut into submodule 6.5, completion of work.
And we really get it. We know that many of you, the learners, the project managers, the owners, reps out there, you need a rapid but also an absolutely thorough grasp of this turnover phase. I mean, this isn't just about finishing a job. This is the moment where liability actually shifts, where big money gets released, and where long-term asset management really begins.
That's why this deep dive is so crucial. We've got a stack of structured training procedures right here, and they outline 8 critical steps. The steps that transition a project from, a bustling construction site to a formally accepted operational asset. And missing just one of these steps can derail months of work.
Oh, easily. And the mission here, for you, is to move beyond just reading a checklist. We need to be able to describe these essential quality management procedures, understand the deep legal why behind each one.
Yes.
And I think most importantly, grasp their inherent chronological sequence. These are mandatory interlocking steps. They're not just suggestions on a list.
And what's so fascinating to me here is how these procedures really formalize that final handshake between the builder and the client. Oftentimes, the government, in these scenarios, it kind of elevates quality control, QC, and quality assurance, QA, from just this ongoing site function into something that's definitive, verifiable, and legally binding. It's all designed to protect the owner's investment for years to come.
Exactly. It's the rule book for finishing strong.
Okay, so let's start right on the ground, proving that the asset isn't just physically complete, but that it's functionally ready. We're going to begin with Procedure A testing of completed systems.
This is truly the moment of truth, isn't it? It's where all the theory and the drawings meet hard reality. And the module, it's absolutely crystal clear on this point. Testing must be performed as required by the technical specifications of the contract.
That phrase seems really important.
It is. That phrasing is the linchpin of this entire step. It is not enough to just pass some generic industry standard. You have to pass the bespoke performance standard that was written into the specifications for this specific job.
Okay, so let's unpack that with a challenge then. What if a contractor installs a piece of heavy equipment? Let's say a specialized boiler.
Okay.
And it passes the standard manufacturer's test, no problem. But it fails one very specific metric that's required by the technical specs. Maybe it's related to a narrow environmental tolerance or really strict energy efficiency goal. Which document governs in that fight?
Oh, the contract is the ultimate authority. Every single time. The technical specifications will override the generic industry standard.
So no wiggle room?
None. If the specification calls for the system to maintain a certain temperature differential at 95 degrees ambient, and the contractor only tested it successfully at 85 degrees, then the project is technically non-compliant. And it doesn't matter if the system is working in a general sense. It failed the test that was paid for.
I see. So the technical specs are the absolute blueprint for verification. And this kind of testing applies to everything, right? We're talking hydrostatic testing of pipelines for leaks, structural load testing of roofs, commissioning complex electrical grids.
Or even functional testing of specialized medical or laboratory equipment. It's across the board.
And I assume the paperwork is just as important as the test itself.
Oh, absolutely. The documentation of these tests, the data logs, the certified results, the sign-offs from third-party inspectors, that becomes the formal proof. This isn't just about the physical asset. It's about the paper trail that verifies the asset's performance.
And without it?
Without the successful completion of this testing, you haven't proven functionality. And you simply cannot move forward toward formal acceptance, full stop.
Okay. So once we've verified that everything works as specified, we then move to internal accountability. Which brings us to Procedure B, Contractor Punch-Out.
Right. And this is the contractor's moment of self-assessment before the client's audit even begins.
So they have to check their own homework first.
Exactly. Near completion, the contractor is required to proactively prepare their own deficiency list, what everyone calls the punch list, and then immediately start making corrections. This whole step is about cleaning up your own house first.
And this is where we find one of the most significant rules, one that establishes a very clear organizational separation. The module explicitly states, Quality assurance, QA personnel, will not prepare the contractor's deficiency list. Why is that firewall so fiercely protected in these procedures?
Well, it really boils down to two things: ownership and liability.
Okay.
Quality control, or QC, that's the contractor's internal system. They are responsible for monitoring their own work against the requirements. Quality assurance, QA, that's the client's or the government's oversight function.
They're the auditors.
They're the auditors, exactly. And if the QA team started generating the contractor's own QC list, the contractor could legitimately argue that they were just relying on the client's QA system to manage their own quality.
Ah, I see. It muddies the water.
It completely muddies the water, it dilutes accountability, and it essentially shifts the QC burden and therefore some of the liability right back to the owner.
So the rule is there to ensure the builder maintains sole ownership of that QC process right up until the final handover. It forces them to have internal rigor.
Precisely. And this internal punch-out, it has to be swift. The pressure is really on the contractor to correct these deficiencies promptly to keep the whole schedule moving.
Because time is money.
Well, it's not just money here. Time is also liquidated damages if you miss that turnover.
Right. But there's one element of Procedure B that really acts as a hard gate for the entire timeline that follows. What's the crucial precondition here that links B directly to the next stage, Procedure C?
This is a big one. The source states that all major deficiencies noted during this contractor's punch-out inspection must be corrected prior to the pre-final inspection.
C. Non-debatable.
It's a non-negotiable step. If the contractor finds a major flaw, let's say significant structural component needs rework, or a fire door was installed incorrectly, they cannot invite the client in for the formal pre-final inspection until that major flaw is demonstrably fixed.
That is highly significant. It ensures that the client's formal audit Procedure C isn't just a waste of time spent documenting obvious major flaws that the contractor already knew about.
Exactly.
It forces the contractor to reach a high baseline of quality before they even engage the client's team. It must streamline the whole acceptance process.
It has to. It establishes the necessary sequence. Internal QC verification, which is B, must come before the formal external verification, which is C. It prevents projects from just languishing in these endless cycles of pre-final inspections where the same basic flaws are continually re-identified.
Makes perfect sense.
So now, moving from those internal checks, A and B, we get to the formal, structured, external audit trail. We arrive at the pivotal moment. Procedure C, pre-final and final inspections.
This is the official acceptance process. So who exactly is in the room for this? The module specifies QA personnel and QC personnel.
Correct. The contractor's QC manager is there to confirm that their system worked, and the government's QA team is there to verify compliance against the contract.
A meeting of the minds, hopefully.
Hopefully. But the roles are, they're heavily weighted toward the QC manager at this stage. They don't just attend the meeting. They must officially assure that all the deficiencies that were identified during the pre-final inspection are fully corrected before the final inspection can even be scheduled.
Wow.
And more than that, they have to formally report the status of these corrective actions back to the government.
So the QC manager is holding the clipboard and all the responsibility for tracking every single item, ensuring it's resolved, and then communicating that success to the client. This is really the synthesis point, where all the previous fixes from A and B are verified by an outside party.
Exactly. And that report, the one on the status of corrective actions, it's often linked directly to milestone payments.
Ah, of course.
Without that sign-off confirming the pre-final list is clear, the financial release just stalls.
In the final inspection. This is often when the true end users, the actual client or customer personnel, are formally invited to review the facility, right?
That's right. And this is so critical because they're the ones who have to live and work in this space every day.
This has to be vital for achieving real end user acceptance. I mean, the general contractor might satisfy all the engineering specs, but the user might notice that a critical piece of equipment is placed incorrectly for their operational workflow.
And that leads to the next complexity. What do you do with new deficiencies that are raised by the client team during this final walkthrough?
Good question. If the client notes a new deficiency, the government acts as the arbiter, is that right? They have to examine the issue and determine if it's design-related or construction-related.
That's the critical eel filter.
Yeah.
It has to be. So if the client notes that a wall outlet is missing where they expected one to be, the government determines, did the contractor fail to follow the drawing?
Which would be a construction issue, contractor's liability.
Correct. Or Was the drawing itself flawed and it failed to specify the required outlet?
Which is a design issue, potentially a change order.
Exactly. The contractor is only notified if corrective action is required under the terms of the contract. This protection is essential. A contractor can't be held liable for the client's design oversights after the fact.
But regardless of where the deficiency came from, the ultimate gate is absolute, isn't it?
Yeah.
The turnover can't happen until a certain condition is met.
That condition is, all significant deficiencies must be corrected prior to turnover. This is the final non-negotiable barrier to project completion.
Which brings up that important question we touched on earlier. It requires some practical industry context. Who gets to define significant? The source material is a little vague, it seems, on purpose, relying on the contract. But in practice, on a job site, how is that threshold established?
Well, in high-stakes construction, and particularly government work, significant typically means any deficiency that prevents the facility from being used for its intended purpose.
Okay.
Or anything that impacts safety or violates core regulatory mandates. We're talking life safety systems, structural integrity, core functionality like power or water supply.
So a scratch on the paint in a storage closet, while it might be annoying, is usually not going to be considered significant. It can be handled after turnover.
Right.
But a fire suppression system that fails to commission or HVAC that doesn't meet critical clean room environment parameters, that's a turnover stopper.
Absolutely. Think of it less in terms of cosmetic flaws and more in terms of legal occupancy and fitness for use.
That's a great way to put it.
In practice, the contract usually defines minor versus significant deficiencies using very clear parameters. Sometimes it's a dollar value, sometimes it's criteria based on regulatory impact. But if the deficiency prevents the fire marshal from signing off on occupancy, it is definitively significant.
And that negotiation is crucial because until that final sign-off, the asset remains fully in the contractor's scope of liability.
That's it. This entire audit trail, all of Procedure C, is designed to force that final compliance.
Okay, so we've established the physical structure is sound, it's been tested and inspected. A, B, and C are done. Now we pivot entirely.
You do.
A building is only half the asset, right? The knowledge required to operate it, to maintain it, to modify it, that's the other half. We are now entering the realm of intellectual property and knowledge transfer.
And this is so critical. I mean, if you hand over a billion-dollar facility with no instructions, you've really just handed the owner a billion-dollar liability.
That's a powerful statement.
The documentation procedures are often where less experienced contractors fail. They focus so heavily on the physical build and not enough on the paper legacy they're leaving behind.
Let's dive right into that legacy with Procedure D. Complete as-built drawings.
Right. The necessity here is pretty self-evident, but the execution can be really difficult. As-builts are the final, definitive set of drawings that show the work as it was actually built.
Not as it was designed.
Exactly. They have to reflect all the field changes, the clashes, the routing adjustments, and any structural deviations from the original design. They are the map for every single subsequent maintenance worker or renovation crew that ever sets foot in that building.
And what's fascinating, and something the module really stresses, is the timing requirement. It says these drawings are required to be updated continually throughout the project. This isn't meant to be a single rush task in the final week.
And that is a key insight into risk mitigation.
Yeah.
It really is. If you're using traditional red line markups on paper and you wait till last month, the field crew who actually installed the ductwork or routed the conduits has often moved on to other projects.
Oh, that's a great point. Their memory is gone.
It's gone. And the subsequent drafts that are based on memory are inevitably inaccurate and potentially dangerous. So the QC manager's role is to enforce this continual update, to ensure the drawings maintain fidelity to the installation as it happens.
So the QC manager reviews and completes these drawings during the final stages just to prevent any loose ends. Let's connect this to a real-world scenario. If a pipe was rerouted in a ceiling plenum to avoid a structural beam and that change wasn't recorded in the as-builts, what's the long-term risk for the owner?
The risk is astronomical. Just imagine a maintenance crew, maybe 5 years later, trying to access a valve based on the original drawing. They find a beam instead. So they blindly cut into an adjacent ceiling tile, only to hit that rerouted pipe.
Catastrophe.
A catastrophic maintenance failure. You've got flooding, immense damage, all traceable back to one piece of inaccurate documentation. So for you, the listener, the takeaway is clear. The accuracy of the as-builts dictates the long-term maintainability and the safety of the asset.
The quality of the information transfer is indeed as critical as the quality of the structure itself. And that leads us directly to the functional textbook for the facility. Procedure E Operations and Maintenance O&M Manuals.
O&M manuals are, you said it, they're the operational Bibles. They contain everything the owner needs to run the facility. Parts lists, warranty details, preventative maintenance schedules, vendor contacts, troubleshooting guides,
Whole 9 yards.
and very specific shutdown and startup procedures.
Right.
Everything.
And the QC manager's responsibility here is logistical. It says they have to assure the submittal of all required O&M data in accordance with scheduled submittal dates. Why the emphasis on scheduled submittal dates? Why can't they just dump a big binder on the table during turnover?
Because the client needs time to review them and approve them. Government contracts especially are subject to intense scrutiny. The client's engineers have to verify that the recommended maintenance schedules are realistic, that all the required data sheets are present, and that the procedures comply with local codes.
And that review can take time.
That review and approval process can take weeks, sometimes even months, especially for complex systems. Submitting them early is an absolute prerequisite for moving to the next logical step.
Which brings us to Procedure F Instruction and Training Procedures. This is conditional, of course. It only applies if the contract actually requires the contractor to train the client or customer personnel.
And this procedure contains one of the most logically sound chronological rules in the entire module.
Oh,
I mean, training is only useful if it's based on the final approved reference material, right?
of course.
Therefore, the QC manager must ensure the O&M manuals from Procedure E are submitted, reviewed, and approved prior to the specified training being conducted by qualified instructors.
That sequence prevents a complete disaster. You don't want the contractor training the owner's team on a system using a draft O&M manual that is later deemed non-compliant or inaccurate during the review.
Exactly. The moment that manual is approved, it becomes the official, accepted rulebook for the training.
And for the facility's life.
It ensures quality control is applied to the knowledge transfer itself. Furthermore, it stresses that the training has to be conducted by qualified instructors. This isn't just a quick walkthrough by the job foreman. This often requires certified vendor technicians or specialists who can train the client's team on complex proprietary equipment, ensuring they meet the legal and operational standards for safe use.
A very high bar.
It's often the last major contractual hurdle before you get to final legal acceptance.
Okay, so with the physical build verified A, B, C, and the intellectual property formalized D, E, F, we move into the logistical conclusion.
And the legal framework that follows acceptance. We start with Procedure G materials turnover.
Now, this sounds straightforward, but as we know, construction procedures always have layers of verification. This covers things like required keys, spare parts, and materials the client needs for day one operations.
It does, but the module makes this logistically demanding. The QC manager has to verify 3 specific things prior to the final inspection. C, which again emphasizes that strict timing. The materials must be sorted, identified, and demonstrated to be usable.
Let's zero in on those 3. Sorted, identified, and usable. Give me an example of how a contractor might fail one of those criteria.
Okay, a failure to be sorted might mean throwing all the final door keys into a single unlabeled box. The owner's team then has to waste a day matching hundreds of keys to door numbers.
A nightmare.
A total nightmare. A failure to be identified might involve handing over a dozen cans of touch-up paint without clear labels specifying which rooms or areas they belong to. That paint is essentially worthless for targeted repairs.
And the most important one, demonstrated to be usable.
That is the highest bar. It means functional proof. If the contract requires spare filters for the HVAC system, the QC manager has to demonstrate they're the correct size and media type.
They physically fit.
They fit. If a spare pump is included, the demonstration might involve a factory acceptance test certificate or even a physical demonstration showing the pump functions, ensuring it wasn't damaged in storage. This requirement prevents the contractor from just ticking a box by dropping off a pallet of obsolete or broken inventory.
It's really the moment the owner gets the tools to maintain the facility without having to immediately go out and buy replacements.
That's it.
And finally, we arrive at the legal structure that protects the client long after the contractor has driven off the site. Procedure H warranty.
This is a deep dive into contractual risk management. The QC manager has to ensure all the warranty information is formally provided and that specific procedures for warranty notification and correction are in place.
So it's not enough to just provide the warranty.
No, you need the mechanism for actually using it.
Right. And here's where we get into the highly specific regulatory detail. The module cites the FR Clause 52.24621 Warranty of Construction. What does this specific government regulation mandate as the baseline?
The baseline rule is pretty straightforward. The general warranty period for construction work is 1 year from the time of acceptance by the government, unless the specifications say otherwise. That 1-year clock starts ticking the second the government formally accepts the project. It covers deficiencies in materials and workmanship.
But the source material is quick to layer on some crucial nuances that really protect the government's investment. The first one is about manufacturer warranties.
Correct. So if a specialized piece of equipment, say a massive chiller unit or a proprietary security system, comes with a longer warranty directly from the manufacturer, maybe 2, 3, or even 5 years, this extended period accrues to the government. It would be negligent for the client to lose that extended protection just because the contractor's general warranty is only 1 year. The builder must legally transfer the benefit of the longest available warranty period to the owner.
That makes perfect sense. The owner should get the full benefit of every component they paid for. Now, let's talk about the second, highly impactful nuance, the one that truly incentivizes quality repairs, the Warranty Reset Fresh Clause.
This is, I would argue, the most powerful quality enforcement tool in the final stages. The rule states, if the contractor repairs or replaces a component of the project during the warranty period, then this component is warranted for 1 year from the repair or replacement date.
Okay, that has massive financial and risk implications for the contractor. Let's create a scenario. A $500,000 roof system fails on day 364 of the original 1-year warranty.
Cutting it close.
The contractor rushes in, patches the leak, and walks away. If that patch was only covered for the 1 remaining day of the original warranty, there's absolutely no incentive for a quality fix.
Exactly. And the warranty reset mechanism prevents exactly that strategy. Since the contractor performed a repair, that specific roof component, or at least the area of the repair, is now warranted for a fresh 365 days from the date the repair was accepted.
Wow.
It forces the contractor to treat that remedial work with the same level of quality and diligence as the original installation, because they're starting the liability clock all over again on that specific piece.
That's a huge psychological shift. It means the contractor can't just run out the clock with minimal effort. They are essentially re-upping their insurance and liability coverage on that repaired component for a full year.
That's it. So Procedure H isn't just paperwork. It's the legal mechanism that enforces the quality standards we established in A, B, and C long into the future.
Okay. Let's unpack all this and synthesize all the conditional rules we just discussed. I mean, the entire system is built on logic and prerequisites. The source material asks us to determine the appropriate chronological order for these 8 quality management procedures. They're listed A through H alphabetically, but the actual workflow is highly specific.
Right, and this section really confirms our understanding of all those prerequisites we've been talking about. We have to be able to justify the placement of every single procedure based on the contractual rules we just extracted from the module.
So let's start at the absolute earliest point. Before the client or the QA team can even be involved in a formal review, the contractor has to prove they've done their own due diligence.
And that puts step 1 firmly at B, contractor punch-out.
The rationale.
The rationale is that rule we talked about. All major deficiencies noted during B must be corrected prior to the pre-final inspection, which is C. So B is the required internal self-check and cleanup. It has to be first.
Okay, that makes sense. Next, the contractor has to functionally prove that the systems they've installed actually meet the performance requirements of the contract. This is the technical proof that has to exist before any formal compliance audit.
So step 2 is A, testing of completed systems. This is a prerequisite verification step required by the tech specs. And although this testing can sometimes run concurrently with B, its successful completion is logically required before the formal inspection in C can verify final compliance.
Got it. So with the internal checks and the functional testing complete, we're finally ready to invite the client for the formal audit.
Which means step 3 is C, pre-final and final inspections. This is the formal acceptance and verification step, which synthesizes the results of B and A. It's the critical gate before you can even think about turnover.
Okay. So once the physical structure has been inspected and the final state of the asset is known, we have to finalize the documentation that records that physical reality.
That brings us to step 4. D. Complete as-built drawings. The QC manager finalizes these drawings in the final stages of construction, right?
Yep.
This has to happen after the inspections in C confirm the final as-built state, but before the keys are handed over.
Perfect. Now we move to the operational instructions for the client, the how-to guide for their new building.
So step 5 is E-O&M manual submission. We establish that these manuals have to be submitted, reviewed, and approved before any training happens. This places E as a mandatory precursor to F.
Okay, this brings us to a slightly tricky point. Procedure G, materials turnover. We noted that the verification for G, sorted, identified, usable, has to happen prior to the final inspection C.
Right.
But the actual physical handover and the inventory demonstration, that usually finalizes during the transition period.
Correct. While the verification precedes C, the logistical turnover of the keys, the spare parts, and the materials themselves. Procedure G, that usually occurs after the structure is accepted in C and the documentation is in place from D and E.
And since the materials are necessary for the training and operation that follow,
we place the final physical handover here at step 6, G, materials turnover.
And now we're ready to teach the owner's staff how to actually use the materials and the approved manuals.
So step 7 is F, instruction and training. And this has the hardest prerequisite we found. The O&M manuals from E must be submitted, reviewed, and approved prior to the training. So F must follow E.
And finally, the legal action that stems from the successful completion of all 7 previous steps.
Step 8 has to be H, warranty. The warranty period, that 1 year, starts from the time of acceptance by the government, and that acceptance can only happen after all the previous logistical, functional, and documentation steps are complete. H is the legal closing of the entire process.
So the resulting justified chronological order, driven strictly by all the conditional rules and prerequisites we found in submodule 6.5, is B, then A, C, D, E, G, F, and finally H.
Yeah.
It's actually a beautifully logical progression from that first internal quality check in B all the way to the final legal protection in H.
And that sequencing just confirms that turnover is not some casual administrative task. It's a highly structured risk mitigation exercise where every single logistical step, from proving functionality in A to providing spare parts in G, is linked by contractual rules that ultimately trigger that warranty period in H.
This deep dive into submodule 6.5 has really given you the essential roadmap for mastering project completion. We went deep on the contractual mandate of technical specifications and testing, the strict firewall between contractor QC and client QA and B, and the intense level of verification required during inspections in C.
And we clarified those 3 critical safety nets that are built into the legal framework of the warranty. Procedure H, the standard 1-year clock, the accrual of all the extended manufacturer warranties, and that powerful project-saving warranty reset that ensures quality remedial work.
And we also established that the quality of the paper is often just as critical as the quality of the concrete, which it brings up a final provocative thought. Given that training, F, is conditional on accepted documentation, E, what is the latent hidden liability inherent in signing off on training materials that you know are already missing critical as-built data from D, or maybe contain unapproved operations sequences?
That's a critical takeaway. The integrity of the documentation determines the survivability of the asset. Mastering these completion procedures ensures you successfully transfer ownership, you minimize your immediate post-turnover liability, and you leave the client with a functional, maintainable asset, not a ticking time bomb of poor documentation.
Well said. This deep dive has concluded our exploration of completion procedures from Construction Tutor. If you found this discussion valuable and you want more insights into complex industry topics and critical training modules, please do the team a favor. Like and subscribe to this channel, Construction Tutor, so we can keep bringing you these deep dives.
Thank you for sharing your sources and for joining the deep dive. Now go apply this newfound knowledge and ensure your next project turnover is flawless.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.